Hey guys, Comet here. Welcome back to Alchemy Factory. In the last episode, I put in a mega growth potion build, and in this episode, I want to start using all of those growth potions to make the Mars Relic. So first thing I'm going to do is research that. I guess I can also pick up copper ingots along the way. It's probably time I picked that up. I don't have a use for black powder yet. People are going to want that in the shop, but I don't want to have to go through a full-on silver build in order to make black powder until I absolutely have to for blast potions. I could also pick up the thermal extractor, but I think the thermal extractor, here's a controversial opinion, I don't think the thermal extractor is as good as a lot of people make it out to be. It essentially lets you trade a fertilizer cost for a fuel cost by reducing the amount of nurseries you need to supply material to the regular extractor because you get more out of the input materials. The problem is that to get any decent efficiency out of this, it has to be built quite high. And right now, I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 floors. My floors are two walls tall. To get the maximum value out of the extractor, I would have to have 8 of my factory floors. So I'm not quite there yet, and I'm considering redoing the general structure of my base a little bit. Instead of having the 3 separate towers, like the shop, the manufacturing tower there, and then the manufacturing tower here, I'm thinking about just putting everything together. That would give me a lot more space to work with, especially down this center road here. So I might end up redoing the floors anyway. We'll have to see how that plays out, but in this episode, I'm going to be getting into all of the Mars building, so I'll go ahead and throw up on screen the plan I'll be following. It looks more complicated than it is. That's just because, for some reason, the soap for the bronze was split up from the soap for the copper, so it's in 2 separate trees. But this floor here, this is where we're putting all of the Mars processing. And I think I'll start with the steel tree. That is 32 processors doing steel gears. Fortunately, processors are very easy to stack. Now, I can't quite fit a full 8 underneath the balcony. That top one gets cut off. So I'm only going to stack this 4 tall, so that I can then stack it horizontally. This is 16, and then if I just copy that, there is the full 32. And I actually think I'm going to have it split the input belt and output on both sides instead. So these outputs will come out this way, and join up in the middle there. And then I'll just copy that for each floor. So there's a single input belt here for steel. There's a switchback down the center that hits all of the processors, and then there's just 2 switchbacks on both sides that join everything up together here in the center. So this will make all of the gears needed. We'll get this out of the way. Over in, this corner here is fine. Now to make all of the steel that goes into the gears, I'm going to need 32 Athanors. And I think the easiest way to do that is just with some stacked furnaces. Now the steel comes out of the yellow output here, which means the iron comes out of the blue output there. So I can run the iron back through a priority merger. Then, on top of that, any new iron can come in to supplement any missing iron. That will then flow into there. Then a fuel line across the bottom here. And it also needs to go into that athanor there. So coke powder can enter here and here. Iron will enter here. And then steel will come out along this manifold here. And that is all tileable. And mirrorable. I don't know if that's a word. Then to get the full 32, I can stack this in this direction. That is 16. And then I could either stack it again or just double it here. So right here at the halfway point, I'd have to drop down with another input belt. Then I would have the 1, 2, and if I double it over here, 3, and then the top one for 4 again. And then the fuel input would be a separate belt entirely. Now let's actually do that. I think that stacks better. Okay, so all 4 coke powder inputs are here. This just runs along horizontally. And then I get half a belt of steel out here, and half a belt of steel out on this side. Now this also takes an iron input, but not quite as many smelters as you might think, only 20. And I think I'll actually just do it as an extension of the steel build. So I'll do 10 furnaces on this side. I can extend this, and the smelters will output on this side, just out into these mergers here. And then the inputs will just be across the top here. So this takes 5 inputs of coke powder, 1 input split across here and here for iron ore, and then I should end up with half a belt of steel here and half a belt of steel here. Those can be combined together and go into all these processors to be turned into the 1 full belt of steel gears I need at the end here. Now to get all of the coke powder I need to come up with another system. The blueprint I have here won't actually work for this. I need 48 crucibles making coke powder. Those need to stack on top of furnaces. Then I can fit 3 per furnace. So 48 divided by 3 is 16. If I stack this 4 tall, then I should only need a total of 4 furnaces to give me the 48. And this actually lines up perfectly with these inputs here. These furnaces can just share the fuel belt right there. Steel can still flow along here. This will be the input coal powder. And I need a total of 24 stone crushers. If I divide that by the 4 levels I have here, that would be 6 crushers per level. That won't tile very well. Let's actually cut this in half. I'll use this half. So that's 6 on this side, 6 on that side. That's the full belt of output. Then, I think stacking the crushers would be a little bit easier. So then I could have 3 on this side, going into those 6. Then 3 on this side, to go into these 6. Gonna need a bit more space here. Let's move this down that way a little more. I need this to extend out 1, 2, 3 more times. I can have a single input belt for coal down the middle here. And then every 3 crushers just come up to the next level. So something a little like that. I'll just get that copied onto the other side. And this whole long monstrosity here, I really do like the fact that it fits in the same width. But all of this is just for the steel. Actually, that's not quite right. I still need some grinders. Gotta do a little bit of a splice here. I'll take this out. Move it out of the way. So every single one of these crucibles needs to have a corresponding grinder. Now I could redo this whole section here so that the crucibles are flipped around to match up with the grinders, or I think it would be easier if I just took this, ran it to the side, so this whole thing now can plug in right here. So the new path is the coal down the center, the ground up coal on this belt here, into the crucible, down the center here, and then it splits. Half of it goes into this set of grinders, half of it goes into that set of grinders, and then it is recombined down the center to go into all of the athanors. And the littlest bit of iron actually comes out of this here to go into its own set of processors to make the few nails I need. So I think I'll just tack that on right here on some boxes. I need a total of 8 processors, which fit very nicely right here. And then I just need to double that on this side. Okay, so this is all of the non-copper products. Now I need to work on all of the copper products. So if I reference the plan again, it's going to be 96 smelters for the iron needed to make the bronze. I'm going to put all of that together with the iron needed for the copper. So the 96 plus the 48 is 144 iron smelters. So I'm definitely going to have to utilize some amount of verticality here. Otherwise it literally won't fit in this floor. And I think our good friend, the retractable beam, might be able to help out a little bit here. So I can only fit 2 furnaces. Because this is the maximum length of the beam. What if I try one of these beams? No. The longest beam will allow me to fit 6, but then I don't have any space for the pillars to support the beam. So that needs to go away. Well, I do have a second dimension I could work with. So what if, instead of putting the beam across this way, I put the beam across this way. I need a space for a pillar there, and that would span to a pillar there. So this way of stacking would work. So if I put this on top of itself, it's definitely going to get into the way of the balcony. So I think I'll make an exception, just because I need so many of these furnaces. I'll stack it 3 tall, and just leave it in the center of the room. So I could start here, right next to the pillar. And if I stack this 3 tall system 48 times, I'll end up with the full 144 I need. I'll just need to maintain a gap every time I get to a belt saturation point. So these produce 10 a minute, and I've got 2 per, which means at 6, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would be 12 smelters per belt. That would fully saturate a belt. So then I would need some kind of a branch out before I then stack this again. So across these 4 here, that would actually be all of the belts of iron I need. Now, the iron does need to be ground up. I could do that here on the ends of all of these, or I could do that at the entrance to the copper powder build. Now, I think I'm going to pivot, go into the nurseries now for the sage and flax to make the soap, just to see how much space I'm going to have left, because I'm quickly running out of space here. I've already got a blueprint for 360 soap powder a minute I made back in the copper and bronze episode. So I could just plop a bunch of these down, or I could redesign it more for the specifications of the Mars. This makes 3 full belts of soap powder. I need a total of 12, so if I just stack this 4 times, I'd actually be done. I don't have to design anything new. And that actually gives me an idea. Because these, I have 4 of them, I could just have one of these units for every one of these units, and everything would scale together. And then this whole grouping here actually lines up with this copper blueprint I made. It takes 3 belts of soap input and 3 belts of iron sand input, which is exactly what this chunk here produces. So a lot of this is actually just recycling old blueprints, because I have all of the pieces already. I have iron, I have soap, I have copper, I've got steel gears, I've got nails. I just need to figure out how all of the pieces are going to connect together now. Let's say the iron, instead of pointing that way, I'm going to rotate it. And put it right up against the pillar there. I think I'll get the soap build right up against it, right here. Then the copper this can line up right about here. If I just get some grinders on the ends of these, everything would just plug in to right here. And then if I stack this whole unit 4 times, I'd have all of the copper I need. So if I get some boxes for some grinders, so a stack of 30 grinders like this will fit in 1 floor, and I can stack that twice more. So just using a switchback down the center here, I can hit all of the grinders. I'll move this into place right up against that. I should be able to just stack this whole thing on top of itself. And then I have 1, 2, 3 full lanes of iron sand out. And everything fits in this nice, neat little box. So I need to get soap into there. And then all of the iron sand goes on this level. So I've got 1 full belt of output here. I've got 1 full belt of output there. And then I've got 1 full belt of output right here. So now all I need to do is copy this 4 times. I doubt it's gonna all fit in my inventory. Actually, it looks like it does. So let's plop another one down. Right about in the same spot. Right there. Of course, it's off by 1 tile. Alright, let's try that again. So, right about here. Yes? There we go. Now it's in line. I'll get the 3rd one in place here. Right up against the pillar there. And then the 4th one will go right here. Alright, well that is everything, actually. I can just belt over all of the outputs. I guess over to right here is fine. I'll get in some shapers. So all of the bearings are on the bottom. Those will just come out this way. Go into that shaper. And into the top shaper here. all of the bearings can connect up to a single belt. They'll all fit. The rivets need to be split up across 2 belts. So this one and this one can join together. All the way over to here. This can just come straight out. And this one will join with it. The bottom shaper will get 1 full belt. And the top shaper will get its own belt. Then gears will just come out and in, up, and in. Nails can come down here. Into the bottom one, and then into the top one. Just like this. I also need to grab this half on this side. And now it should just be a matter of getting all of the inputs connected in. So fuel needs to make its way into this belt here. Just like that. I'll need a purchasing portal for coal. Then I'll need a purchasing portal down here for the iron. I think I will just continue this fuel line out here to hit all of these furnaces. Which means it can also very easily make its way into this area here for the soap build. And then for fertilizer, I think it'd actually be easier just to come up and over this belt here. So just out right here. Over. Up and then back down. Over and into there. Then I don't need any of that. And then the last thing I'll need to set up is the iron input here. And I do need to remember that this is stacking vertically, so I can't have this interfere with the upper one. So I could do a really big convoluted switchback. So fuel can come up there. And I really want to try out these retractable conveyor belts. I think this will help me save some vertical stands. Now, while this does look cool, I don't think this is actually the best way of doing this. I think because they're so far apart from each other, it'll be better just to put the verticality here with a little bridge in the middle, and then the verticality here, rather than having the verticality span the whole thing. So iron needs to go in at this height. This will be coke powder. Then iron again at this height. Coke powder here, and then iron here. So what I can do is grab some coke powder and bring it up to that height. And then do it again up to that height there. And that covers all of the fuel. Then for the iron, I could just come up to that height, and that height there. So now this whole thing, I can just copy. And stick it there. There, and right here. So technically, I could just run this iron line all the way across all of these. Now this is going to take a very long time to saturate, and I'm almost certain I made an error somewhere. So I'm going to let this run for a little while. I'll see how everything backs up. And I'll come back once I know everything is working properly. Now the only bottleneck I'm noticing so far is fuel. I don't think I have quite enough fuel to run everything. So I'm going to put in a second fuel producer here. So this first one will go on to line 2, and then the second one will go on line 4 above the fertilizer. So then through here, by all of the steel... Oh, I just got an achievement. Produce a Mars. I just made a Mars. Hello. But as I was saying, I can get a second line of fuel here, out this way, and I think I'll use a box to balance it across both of these inputs here. And then, without redoing everything, I can sneak a belt through here at this level. For coke powder to go through. And then rebalance right here. And as long as I do this after every chunk, then it should stay balanced. I will admit this is more of a band-aid solution than it is a proper design feature. But it will keep everything working, and that's the important part. There is one thing that I could do over here. If for some reason Mars back up, It's possible to keep making malachite if I'm sinking the pure copper into coins. I would just need to supply some clay powder here. But I don't really have much space left on this floor to make clay powder. So I'm just going to forego this whole section here and not give a output direction for any unused impure copper powder. This will just cause a backup in the Athenors here, which will actually then plug up the pure copper powder, which will prevent any coins from being made, which is a good thing because it actually costs more copper to make these coins than I get back out of it. I just need this here because I am making too much pure copper powder for the Mars build. So a few coins have to be made, but if I'm backed up on bronze, then I don't want there to be an option for bronze to go somewhere else into the malachite to then make more coins. I want this to be like the stopping parameter. But adding that extra fuel seemed to have helped. Everything is flowing. I should be making Mars at 0.4 a minute now. I haven't noticed any problems in these builds, other than my blueprint was actually missing the piping here for these extractors. So I will update that and repost it in my Discord to the updated version. I'll also make a blueprint for the iron sand. And then I guess I could do one massive one for this whole steel part here. Or I could break it up into individual sections. I assume that by the time you're doing this, you have quite a large inventory to work with anyway. So I think that'll be it for this episode. I completed everything I wanted to get done. I think the next episode, I will try and go towards the pocket watch. People are starting to ask for these things in the shop, and they also have a purchase contract option, which is a lot of easy money. So if you want to pick up any of these blueprints, I'll leave a link to my Discord in the description. But that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.